Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. And now you're going other places other than the U.S. So I know you have the pod tours, but you've also been to the Philippines and Colombia now, right?
Yeah, so Canada was our first, if you want to say, international Toronto. Thanks to you and our leaders out there. But I would say Philippines, Southeast Asia, Podfest. That was a full Podfest. Mm-hmm. Colombia was more, I would say, of us visiting dignitaries, a little pod tour stop at someone else's conference. But they treated us like gold. I mean, it was incredible to be there and be treated so nicely like dignitaries. But the Podfest brand, it's really incredible to see that people will show up when Podfest is there in different countries now. And that's because of the COVID experience, because of the virtuals that we did.
Yes.
And you know this, you were one of the pillars of those events, but we must have, I think we looked at the numbers. We had over 18,000 people come through our doors during just the virtual stuff.
Yeah, it was insane. Well, that was the Guinness Book of World Record years, right?
Yeah. We hit it, and then we said, let's do it one more time. We broke it, and then we're like, okay, this is good. It's just a lot. Those events were 2 weeks at a time. And, people don't.
Yeah.
They were fun because we were all home anyways, so it was something to do.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I mean, even those virtual events, I remember learning a ton because you could, of course, watch things later. You could show up when you need to show up. You were in your own home. It was much more convenient that way. So I didn't feel like I was missing out. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I guess there's a danger in a face-to-face, in-person convention where there's so much going on and you can never be in as many places as you want to be. So yeah, I must say that I really appreciate the fact that you film a lot of these to show later in case we can't actually make the session, because that's a pretty big deal when you're in person and there is so much going on. And I think it's only going to be worse this year because there's like so many people and a lot going on and a lot new.
Yeah, and this year we're actually putting the topics we're looking for and then finding speakers, which is, we started that with the last virtual event we did. We're like, instead of just having people submit whatever, why don't we just list what we need? And then we have such a robust community. It's one of the rare things. I know, Jodi, you know it because you're literally like an ambassador of Podfest, but it's unusual when you share with people like, hey, the education is going to be some of the best you've ever seen. And they're like, oh, okay, I hear that all the time. It's like, no. People prepare all year to showcase what they got at Podfest. So it is an embarrassment of riches, which I'm really blessed that I would say 90%, you can't hit 100 all the time, but I would say 9 out of 10 are just stellar. And then there's people we give a shot to and then we give them feedback after. But overall, our batting average is pretty high as far as the quality of the content you're going to get at Podfest.
Oh, sure. And it's always a learning experience, even for the presenters. So,
100%. Yeah. There's like 150 presenters every year.
Yeah. Like this is going to be, I think, the second time that I've presented this year. And I'm looking forward to it because my colleagues, George Whittam and Ann Ganguza, are going to be with me as well. And we have a lot of interesting... They are great. They are great. And I mean, Ann did a great presentation last year. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I heard about it.
Yeah, she did a really, really good presentation. So I'm looking forward to getting George in the mix and talking about sound because, of course, we all love sound. That's kind of why we're here.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's a lot going on. But I have to say that it is stressful, a little bit stressful, trying to figure out, because I'm not a public speaker. That is not something that I've trained at or that I understand a whole lot. I do it here on the podcast and I have a lot of fun with it and I love having conversations. And
for someone that's like an introvert, you do such a great job though. So I know from what you tell me, because I could tell you don't want to be in front of the crowd or whatever.
Not really,
no. But you're such a great example of like pushing past your fear, and because your message always comes through, and you're always a great presenter.
Well,
but I think that's a testament to people that might be a little bit. I know at Podfest you probably feel more at home, and I get that part. But I've seen you when we're at the Toronto Pod Tour stop, and you're like, then you did a great job. But I think it's a testament to anyone that's maybe having apprehensions. Try it in the moment. Once you get in the moment, you're great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that a lot. But that kind of leads me into another question for you, and that is like you've really leaned into the whole public speaking thing. Because, I mean, that's kind of how you started, isn't it? Like you were doing these business gatherings and stuff like that.
Correct.
So public speaking, are there any things that you've particularly kept in mind in order to do a good public presentation?
Yes. So I've done, I don't want to say I've done every kind that you could imagine, but I've done a lot, like from commencement speeches for colleges with 1,000 people. I've been asked to do a lot of weird things. This is before even Podfest, and Podfest takes me into other cool stuff. and half the time, there's some of these meetup pod tours, we're dealing with someone on the ground and half's not prepared. So I got to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah.
So what I would always say to people is, why did they show up? Your audience. What is it that they're looking to learn? What is it that you have a value to share with them? And this is just my 2 cents. There's different things, but I try not to waste anyone's time. I try and understand, okay, if they showed up for XYZ, let me do some establishing. Here's why this is important, but no more than a minute or two. If they need to know a little bit about me, I will tell them about what I do. One of the things I've always noticed is if you think someone has a question, and they're confused, that's not good. So I try and be clarify as much as I can. So when I'm speaking, they're focused on what I'm speaking on. And the things I've noticed for me now, because I do tips, so I'm giving top 10 tips usually every year of whatever's going on. This year it's top 10 video podcasting tips. And there's some audio tips in there anyways, because I love audio. So that's like my number 2 tip. So I throw them in there.
I certainly appreciate that.
Yeah. I always throw in the audio because that's our world, right? But I also want to share people what's going on with video because a lot of people want to know. But what I'll always say to them is, I'll give you like an example. Like I teach to the tips, and that's very easy. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. Here's the tips. And then at the end, here's a bonus. I always like giving a bonus. What I'll say, and this is just something I've learned, I'll say to a crowd, hey, I'm not giving you 10 tips to tell you, because some people will punish themselves that they're doing all 10 tips wrong. I'll say, listen, I'm here to give you ideas, and maybe there's 1 or 2 of these tips you want to implement when you go home, but don't make yourself wrong if you're not doing this stuff. This is just some best practices across spectrum. So I try and take the onus that people don't make themselves feel guilty, because a lot of overachievers tend to blame themselves. So that's something I've implemented the last couple of years. And I see people like they could then absorb the information without making themselves wrong.
Sure. Yeah. It takes the pressure off. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that you're talking about video and you have 10 tips, any of those that you want to share? Because
I'll give you a good one that I like.
Yeah.
And this could be done for audio too, but it's for YouTube specific. So let's say you did this great sit down. Let's say you actually had the ungettable get, and you got cameras and you interviewed them and you did it all perfectly. But the person went on a 30-minute rant and you didn't even ask the question, but it was great stuff in that 30 minutes. There was 2 or 3 great nuggets. So let's say the interview is done, the person leaves, go back and re-record a question to a 10-minute segment of that rant. So now you have a video short that you could promote. When I say short, like 5 or 10 minute.
Well, shorts are longer now on YouTube, right?
I know they're 3 minutes
like
now.
3 minutes, yeah.
But when we say podcasting shorts, most podcasters, like if you look at like the 3-hour podcasts, like the Joe Rogan types, a video short for them is a 10-minute to 5-minute.
I see. Yeah,
they do have
sense.
Short form when we talk about short that goes up to now 3 minutes. But what I notice is like the big podcasters. So if you have a really great segment, but you never ask the question, you can't really use it, because we either just put the person up without your face. So you need to go back and re-record the question and then put it together as a finished. I love that tip. That's from Graham Steffens is where I heard that, and he'll do that sometimes. And it helps him stay in the conversation, even though he was never in the conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a really good tip. I love it. Yeah. I will say that one of the most disengaged podcasts I was ever on was when the question was just asked of me and I was just supposed to talk. And it wasn't even the person, we weren't having a conversation. It was me writing my response and then having
There's
them.
some weird formats. The weirdest one I've ever been part of is the person was interviewing me and then they said, at the end of it, they go, "This is the part where you get to interview me." And I go, "Excuse me?" And then they ask me to interview them on their own show. So, you get you get different flavors, but, I just roll with the punches.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of out of nowhere.
I like to be prepared. I know you like to be prepared. I like to be prepared if I'm going to ask you some questions to be at least interesting. But, when you're dealing with a lot of beginners, a lot of people are trying different things. So I like it because it's something different to see. But it is something I would recommend you prepare the person that's going to be on your show.
Yeah.
If you're going to have them asking you questions, maybe there's a part of your life you want them to ask, not just any random question.
Yeah, yeah. There's just to maybe give people a hint. There, like you've experienced this just recently. In my intake form, I actually have a field in there where I ask people if there are any questions or topics they want to discuss. And so I make it a point to actually talk about those things and not just leave them in there.
I think that's a great thing that you have getting ready for the interview.
I think it helps a lot because, I mean, this isn't a gotcha situation, right? Like, I'm not out to make people look bad. I'm out to make them look really good. That's the whole point. Otherwise, why would they come on and talk with me, right?
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot that goes into putting together a podcast, though, both in the video version and the audio version. And they're slightly different because some of the ads that, like the host read ads that I put in my audio version, or the asks, some of the little in-between things like share this podcast, or if you know someone else who could be a good guest, let me know, these kinds of things, right? They aren't in the video version. So, I mean, that's a good or a bad thing. I think there should be some differences.
100%. Two different platforms. I agree with that.
Yeah, it's tough to know how different they're going to be. I will say, though, that we've worked a lot on the video. Umberto Franco is a fellow voice talent that I've been working with since day one of this podcast. And he does both the audio and the video editing and putting together of this show. And they're very different now than they were when they started.
Yeah, it's two different modalities.
Yeah.
Even the people that are video podcasts, they have to be very conscious when they're talking because it's very easy to go into a visual. And then the audio people, that when you strip the audio, they have no idea what you're talking about. So you got to be very conscious of all that.
Yeah. Oh, actually, so when I was showing you the shirt, I probably should have said something about that.
Well, you did say this shirt, and I got the 10-year anniversary podcast shirt.
Yeah, yeah. So for those who are listening and not visually watching this, we were talking about the shirts that we're wearing, and I happen to be wearing a shirt from the 2020 Podfest that I really like. And
that's one of my favorite shirts. It's the black shirt with the blue, and it's just a good one with the sound bars.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's just really cool. It's actually made of really, really soft material too, which I particularly like the jersey material.
Yeah, it's next level tri-blend. I go to the factory and I try and find the softest shirts.
Yeah, no, they're really good. Yeah, so definitely we'll be spending some more money at Podfest this year, of course.
We do our best.
Yeah. The shirts always look really good. So yeah, I appreciate that. And anyone who's attending definitely will appreciate that. But I want to sort of, before we get to the end here, pardon me, I wanted to sort of get a little philosophical here because we talk about sound here and the influence that it has on our lives. And I know that it's been a huge influence on your life in general, but also with Podfest and all of the people that you support with this fantastic conference. And I'm wanting to ask you why you think sound matters.
Sound is a very intimate platform, medium. And I think what happens with sound, because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, you allow your brain to paint pictures as you listen to the sound. So it's very creative. Whereas when you're watching a video, unfortunately, even though it's very addictive, it's it doesn't really, you see everything and it's there. So it's very gratifying from what do you call it, dopamine hit. But if you're listening to, let's say, audiobooks, and you're visualizing something to the words, in my mind, it's very powerful. There's something lazy about watching video, and we all do it, right? We watch video shows and all that. So there is something that sound brings to the table that you can't get in the other mediums. They're all very impactful mediums, but sound allows you to participate with your own imagination. And I think that's a very special thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Participating with our own imagination. I like that a lot. Kind of like reading, but how many of us are reading these days?
Listen, most people I know that say they read books, I'll say, how do you read them? Audible. Like it's 9 out of 10. So we just say reading because that's the term you use, but really we're listening.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Do you have a favorite type of audio book?
Right now I'm listening to my friend's PJ Pappy Denuzzo's book, Manifest Anything You Could Imagine.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm on a manifestation
he was there
kick.
last year, right?
Yeah. His book is great.
Yeah.
I listened to that. There's another one that I haven't finished. It's called Tiny Habits. It just talks about like if you could get your habits down to really small details. I'll give you an example. He talks about being careful of triggers. So for me, I want to eat healthier, but when I read a menu, I get triggered by what's not healthy, and that's what I order.
Sure.
So he'll say, create a tiny habit of getting that trigger out of the way. So the trigger for me is not looking at the menu, just ordering the salad. So every restaurant has a salad. Doesn't matter if it's the Cobb or Caesar or whatever. So Tiny Habits has been really good. So I usually listen to business books or like self-help. I don't think it's been a while since, if I listen to anything that's not like that, it would be more of a history or philosophy type book. Katie, my wife, listens to all kinds of she's really good. She listened to parenting books and nonfiction. Katie listens to all kinds of variety.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really interesting genre now that it's all audiobooks. There's so many different types. And
we put our daughters to sleep, by the way, with audio. So we play meditations for our daughters.
Oh, okay.
So it has a very special place in our home at night. They always say, put on the meditation, Daddy. Mommy always puts a meditation on. So I'll put a meditation on and they fall asleep every night to a meditation. That's as intimate as you could get with audio.
Yeah, definitely. So is that Katie's stuff specifically?
Yeah. Katie has a couple episodes that they like.
Okay.
And then there's another one called Coco Sleep, which is for kids.
Okay.
So between those two, we play. Katie has one with it's the sound of water dripping. And it's really beautifully done that the girls just love.
Yeah. It's so powerful, and I'm glad that they're growing up with that they're learning how powerful it is all on their own.
They love meditation. They probably listen to more than I have already because every night they go to bed to a meditation.
Oh, that's great. That is wonderful. Yeah. Oh, well, there is probably so much more that we could talk about here, but I'm going to just ask you what you're working on now. I'm assuming it's Podfest, but is there,
Podfest 11-year anniversary.
And a lot of touring coming up as well, right?
Pod tour right now. Toronto is literally on my to-do list.
Great. Okay.
So we're looking coming up to Toronto.
Yep. We'll talk.
Yeah. So that's really Pod tour is my main concern, and then Podfest 11-year.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it and seeing everybody there and seeing you there and seeing how wonderful the community is that comes together. Because
I'm looking forward to your signature coffee break that you do that, that every year is something people look forward to. So there's certain things at Podfest that happen because it's Podfest. And one of them is Jodi's coffee break. People love that. And I love when I see everybody grouped around, just hanging out in a very, it's not loud. It's relaxing, if that makes sense. Yeah. And a lot of stuff
relaxing
in the shows
while
are loud.
We have coffee.
Yes. Yeah, actually it is compared to all the other stuff that happens throughout the day. It's one of the more relaxing breaks where you could just mingle and chat and before all the speakers start going up in all the rooms.
Well, yeah, I love coffee. And, most people like coffee or tea or something warm to start their morning off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I figure it works pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to that and the whole conference this year. And so how can people get in touch with you if they'd like to do that?
So Chris at podfestexpo.com or any of the socials, Chris Krimitsos. You can find me. My name is linked with Podfest. So if you just type in the name Chris and Podfest, you'll find me online.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Chris. I know you have a lot to do. And
Jodi, I'm honored.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.